Welcome, everyone. In this analysis, we're going to explore a massive, state-sponsored transformation happening right now in one of the most legendary work cultures in the entire world, Japan. For decades, the image of the incredibly loyal Japanese corporate worker has been famous globally. But beneath the surface, profound economic and technological pressures are forcing a completely radical paradigm shift. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how Japan is moving away from its traditional post-war roots and what that actually means for the future of work.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our agenda for today. We'll start with the traditional Japanese labor market, then the employment ice age, third, new technologies and specialization, fourth, the company man and inefficiency, fifth, government labor reforms, and finally, number 6, the new work culture in Japan.
Section 1. The traditional Japanese labor market. So I want you to take a second and imagine the 1980s bubble economy. This was a time when the whole world was looking at Japan with just absolute envy. Their corporate success seemed literally unstoppable, and it was all built on a very unique labor foundation. The foundation of this era was built on two absolute core concepts. First, Shushin Koyose, meaning lifetime employment, and Nenko Joritsu, which is seniority-based pay. In this traditional system, companies hired fresh high school and college grads, but not for specific skills. Instead, they hired them as generalists. To the company, these new hires were massive, long-term investments. They'd rotate them through various departments, training them entirely in-house. And this created profound corporate loyalty and deep, highly specific institutional knowledge. Basically, as long as you stayed, your job was totally secure and your pay steadily went up.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how strong those protections were. Honestly, job security was prioritized so heavily over matching specific skills to roles that one American economist famously noted, Japan's post-war labor system is equivalent to socialism. The legal protections against firing an employee were so ironclad that companies had to prove absolute, dire necessity and show they'd tried literally every alternative before letting someone go.
Moving right along to Section 2, the employment ice age. Because as we know, no economic boom lasts forever. And when the bubble burst in the 1990s, the first major cracks in this perfect system began to show.
The sheer euphoria of the 1980s quickly turned into a grueling stagnation in the 1990s. And here's the catch. Because companies legally couldn't fire their older, expensive workers, they did the only thing they could do to cut costs. They drastically limited the hiring of new graduates. This didn't just cause a temporary blip, it created a profound generational crisis that echoed for decades.
This dark period became known as the Shushoku no Hyogaki, or the employment ice age. And it's incredibly tragic, because the traditional system prioritized fresh graduates, mid-career job hopping was virtually taboo. So if you graduated during this ice age and missed out on securing a lifetime employment track right out of school, well, you were essentially locked out forever. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just being locked out, it created a lifelong scarring effect. Many of these individuals were forced into a lifetime of low-skilled part-time or contract work with absolutely zero security.
Section 3. New technologies and specialization. Fast forward a bit to today, and Japan is facing a completely different kind of shock. This time, it's a technological one. The Fourth Industrial Revolution has thrown a massive wrench right into the gears of that traditional internal training model. We are seeing a profound shift from the traditional generalist to the shokumu, or specialist. Think about it. With incredibly complex new tech like AI, machine learning, and advanced robotics, companies can no longer just take a generalist office worker and train them to be a tech expert overnight. The knowledge gap is simply too huge. This is forcing Japanese companies, often very reluctantly, to look outside their own walls and hire external specialists based on specific skills, completely upending the old system of internal promotion. This shift is also bringing Western-style labor models straight into Japan, notably the gig economy. Now, from an employer's perspective, gig platforms like Uber or Airbnb offer a dynamic, cost-saving labor pool that they really feel they need. However, we have to look at the other side of the coin. Economists like Dr. A. Albert Alamdar point out that critics strongly argue this gig model strips away those legendary protections of Japanese labor, viewing it as a new form of capitalist exploitation. It's an incredibly sharp contrast to the era of guaranteed lifetime employment, for sure. Section 4. The company man and inefficiency. To really understand why the government wants to change things so desperately, we need to look at the cultural consequences of the traditional system. Imagine a workplace where leaving before your boss is a major taboo. Sounds exhausting, right?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the concept of the kaisha ningen, or the company man. This was the ultimate post-war ideal, a worker whose entire identity, time, and loyalty belong strictly to the company, often at the massive expense of their own family and personal life. While this extreme dedication sounds like the perfect recipe for corporate dominance, it actually led to something highly unexpected: notoriously low workplace productivity.
The result of all this was a culture of extreme presenteeism. Workers were valued just for being physically present at the office, rather than for what they actually produced. I mean, there are literally startling anecdotes of employees deliberately slowing down, or even erasing and redoing perfectly finished work, just to look busy until their boss finally went home. No way, right? While there are certainly exceptions, like Toyota, who are famous globally for real productivity, this presenteeism became a massive nationwide burden. It caused severe work-life imbalances and profound mental health struggles.
Section 5. Government labor reforms. Recognizing that this outdated model was completely stifling innovation, prime ministers from Koizumi all the way to Abe and recently Kishida realized they had to step in and push for massive systemic reforms. So, let's break down the three main pillars of Prime Minister Kishida's May 2023 labor reforms. Number 1, reskilling the workforce to handle these new digital realities. Number 2, creating firm-specific job areas, essentially pivoting away from generalists to specific skill-based roles. And number 3, shifting labor to high-growth industries. By actively encouraging mid-career job hopping, the government is desperately trying to inject some much-needed dynamism into a market that's been frozen solid by the lifetime employment model.
All of this falls under a broader vision known as Atarashishi Hanshugi, or New Capitalism. The overarching goal is clear: boost labor productivity and potential economic growth. But getting there, that involves highly controversial debates, specifically around making it legally easier for companies to fire workers. We have to look at this impartially. While the government and major corporations argue this flexibility is absolutely crucial for global competitiveness, critics view this neoliberalization as primarily serving employers by just reducing labor costs and stripping away the social safety nets that defined post-war Japan.
Section 6. The new work culture in Japan. So after all these macroeconomic and technological shocks, where does this leave the workers themselves? Well, it's fundamentally altering Japanese society from the ground up. So the crucial point is that we're watching the old paradigm fade away. That old system where the worker was viewed almost like a machine, valued strictly by their physical presence and output for the company, is losing its grip. In its place, a new paradigm is slowly taking root. This is a culture that increasingly views the worker as an individual with personal values, who actually needs a genuine work-life balance. Plus, as Japan's population ages, this new paradigm is setting the stage for a necessarily growing migrant workforce, which is going to introduce even more diverse values into the Japanese office.
Now, the traditional system isn't going to vanish overnight, especially in large manufacturing firms where internal knowledge is still king, but the wheels of change are undoubtedly in motion, which leaves us with this final, truly profound question. What happens to Japanese society when the ultimate company men become individuals? It's literally a cultural revolution happening right before our eyes, and how Japan navigates this balance between efficiency and tradition is going to be a fascinating story to follow. Thank you so much for joining me for this analysis, and keep learning.